Thanks so much, my son, for backing me, and God bless you.
The street was burning hot, dusty, and deafening. But all the noise vanished in Marcus's ears the moment he bent down, slid his hands under an elderly woman's trembling arms, and lifted her onto his back. People stopped and stared. Then they laughed. Some clapped like it was street theater. Phones rose like a wave, all recording. One man shouted, "Look at the delivery guy carrying a beggar like groceries." A woman hissed, "Leave her alone. She's always there asking for money." Marcus didn't stop. He stood straight, his company uniform wrinkled from the day's work, his name badge swinging on his chest. The old woman's white dress was torn and covered in dust. Her voice was paper-thin. "Please. I can't remember where I live. Help me." "I will help you, ma'am," Marcus said, his breath tight but steady. "Hold on tight." He took a step forward. The laughter grew louder behind him. That's when a black SUV screeched to a stop at the end of the street. Doors flew open. Men in expensive suits jumped out. The crowd gasped. Cameras kept rolling. A tall man in dark sunglasses scanned the street like he was searching for treasure. "Where did you find her?" a voice boomed. Marcus froze. The old woman trembled on his back. The crowd went silent. Marcus's day was about to change forever. Don't miss next story. Watching this video to end and share it to 1,000 people and see a comment where did you watching from. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next chapter. Comment below where you're watching from. Marcus Chen's morning started like every other morning in his life, with a quick prayer and a cold shower in his tiny studio apartment in downtown Seattle. He was 23 years old, had been on his own since he was 17, and worked as a courier for a small delivery startup in the Pioneer Square area. His job didn't pay much, but it taught him plenty. He delivered packages in the rain, snow, and blazing sun. He learned shortcuts through the city. He smiled even when customers were rude. He wore his company's blue polo shirt every day, washing it by hand each night and hanging it to dry by the window. His parents had taught him one rule before they passed away in a car accident: never walk past someone who needs help. That afternoon, on his way home after completing his last delivery, he saw her. She was sitting on the concrete near the bus stop junction, hunched over like a forgotten package. People rushed past her as if she were invisible. A cyclist shouted, "Move out of the way." No one stopped. Tears traced clean lines down her dusty cheeks. "Please, someone help me," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm looking for my son. I can't remember where our house is." Marcus slowed down. His heart squeezed in his chest. He stepped closer, lowering himself to one knee so he could see her eyes. "Ma'am," he said gently, "what's your name? Where do you live?" She blinked slowly, like her memories were locked behind a heavy door. I don't know. Everything is foggy. But my son is looking for me. I know he is. Do you remember his name?" Marcus asked softly. She stared at him hard, as if his face might unlock something. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She shook her head and began to cry again. Behind Marcus, footsteps gathered. Whispers started spreading. "Leave her alone," someone said. "She's always begging there." "Don't let her ruin your uniform," another voice added. Marcus swallowed hard. His parents' rule stood firm inside him like an anchor. He slipped his hands under her arms carefully. "Ma'am, let me carry you. I'll take you to my apartment first. We'll clean you up. We'll figure this out together." She nodded very slowly, exhausted and grateful. He lifted her onto his back. She was lighter than he expected. The laughter from the crowd began immediately. Phones rose into the air like a flock of birds, capturing every step. Marcus, the quiet delivery courier, was now carrying a stranger through the heat and dust while her torn white dress fluttered like a worn flag. He walked steadily, ignoring the comments, ignoring the cameras. His apartment was only 3 blocks away. His legs burned, but he didn't stop. When he finally reached his building, a narrow place with chipped paint and a broken mailbox, he pushed through the door with his shoulder and climbed the 2 flights of stairs to his unit. 1 small bed. 1 sagging couch with duct tape on the armrest. A tiny table with 2 mismatched chairs. A kettle that took forever to boil. He set the woman down gently on the couch. She sank into the cushion like she hadn't sat somewhere soft in days. "Please wait here," Marcus said. "I'll get you something to drink." He filled the kettle with water and turned it on. While it heated, he found half a bagel left over from breakfast and placed it on a clean plate. He mixed powdered coffee with hot water and added a spoonful of sugar from the small jar he kept for special occasions. He brought the cup to her with both hands. She watched him carefully, as if measuring something invisible. She took a sip. Her shoulders relaxed. The shaking in her hands slowed. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're a good young man." Marcus smiled. "You're welcome, ma'am. Now, let's try to figure this out. Do you remember anything? A street name? A friend? Your son's work?" She pressed her fingers against her forehead, concentrating hard. My son works with computers. Many computers. He travels for work. People know his name." Marcus leaned forward, his heart beating faster. "Does your son have a name people say on TV?" Then, like a light switching on in a dark room, she breathed a single word. "David. David." Marcus repeated. Her mouth trembled. "David Chen. Tech something. Innovation company." Marcus didn't move. The name hit him like a wave crashing over his head. David Chen. The David Chen. Seattle's tech billionaire. The man whose face appeared on billboards downtown. The man who gave speeches about creating jobs and innovation. The man Marcus had watched on the news and told himself, "Work harder. Dream bigger." Marcus set the coffee cup down slowly, his hands trembling slightly. "Ma'am," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What's your first name?" "Helen," she replied. "They call me Miss Helen at church." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. If she was telling the truth, if she really was David Chen's mother, then she was missing. She had to be. A woman like this didn't just end up alone on a street corner. He grabbed his old smartphone from the table, opened the browser, and typed, "Tech Innovations Seattle contact number." The page loaded slowly. His internet connection was always spotty in this building. He moved closer to the window, holding the phone high, waiting for the signal bars to climb. Outside, he could hear his neighbors talking loudly, probably gossiping about what they'd just seen. Finally, the page loaded. He found the company's main number and dialed, his thumb shaking slightly as he pressed the call button. A professional voice answered. "Tech Innovations, how may I help you?" "Good afternoon," Marcus said, trying to sound calm and confident. "My name is Marcus Chen. I think I found someone. An older woman. She says her name is Miss Helen. She says her son is David Chen." The line went quiet for one long, painful second. Then the voice rushed back, higher and more urgent. "Please hold. Don't hang up." Marcus's pulse hammered in his ears. He looked at Miss Helen. She looked back at him with tired but kind eyes. The voice returned. "Sir, can you please confirm your address?" He gave them the address slowly and clearly. Building number. Street name. The corner store with the faded sign that read, Mike's Minimart. "Thank you," the voice said quickly. "Please stay with her. Do not leave her alone. Someone will contact you very soon." The call ended. Marcus exhaled deeply. He turned to Miss Helen and knelt beside the couch. "Ma'am, help is coming. Your family is coming. Just drink more coffee and rest." She smiled weakly, her eyes filling with tears. "You're like my son," she said softly. "Kind and good." Outside, Marcus could hear more footsteps and voices gathering. His neighbors were definitely talking. One woman said loudly through the thin walls. He carried her inside. Maybe there's a reward coming. A man laughed. That boy thinks kindness pays the rent. Marcus pulled the thin curtain close to give Miss Helen some privacy. He took a small towel, dampened it with warm water from the tap, and gently wiped the dust from her hands. Then he carefully cleaned her face, moving slowly and respectfully, like his mother had once shown him when caring for his grandmother. 10 minutes later, his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered quickly. Hello. A calm, deep voice spoke. Is this Marcus? Yes, sir. This is David Chen. Marcus's breath caught. The voice belonged to the billboards. Steady. Serious. Real. Is my mother with you? David asked, his voice tight with emotion. Yes, sir, Marcus replied. She's safe. She's resting on my couch. Send me your exact location, David said. I'm coming there now. Marcus sent the pin through his phone. His hands buzzed with adrenaline. He slid the phone back into his pocket and turned to Miss Helen. Ma'am, your son is coming. He'll be here soon. She covered her mouth with both hands. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. David, she whispered. My boy. Outside someone shouted. Convoy. Big cars coming. The small apartment building shook with sudden energy. Children squealed. Adults rushed to windows. The smell of expensive engines filled the air. Marcus stepped out into the narrow hallway and looked down the stairs. Through the front door, he could see the first black SUV slide to a stop in front of the building. Then another. Then another. Security personnel in dark suits stepped out like chess pieces being placed on a board. Neighbors dropped everything, brooms, grocery bags, gossip, and stared with wide eyes. The largest SUV's door opened. A tall man stepped out wearing a navy blue suit. No tie. Neatly trimmed beard. His eyes weren't on the crowd. They were scanning the building like a searchlight looking for something precious. Where is Marcus? He called out, his voice firm and clear. Marcus raised his hand, though he wasn't sure it was steady. I'm here, sir. Your mother is inside. She's safe. David Chen took 3 quick steps forward, then stopped as a short, nervous man from the crowd jumped in front of him, pointing an accusing finger at Marcus. Wait, the man shouted. That's not her real helper. He just wants a reward. He's lying. Gasps rippled through the crowd like electricity. The crowd fell completely silent. Even the distant sound of traffic seemed to fade away. David Chen's jaw tightened as he looked from the accusing man to Marcus. Marcus felt every eye in the building land on his face. Every laugh from earlier echoed in his memory like ghosts circling back. He took a breath and spoke clearly, though his voice felt tight. Sir, please come inside and see your mother. David nodded once, his expression unreadable, and moved past the voices toward the building entrance. But before he could reach the door, a second SUV door opened and a woman's voice called out from inside. David, wait. Don't go in alone. The entire crowd held its breath. Who was she? Why did her warning sound like danger? A tall, elegant woman stepped out of the vehicle. She wore a fitted gray dress and pearl earrings that caught the afternoon light. Her face was pale with concern. David, please, she said, gripping his arm. We don't know who this person is. He could be one of them. The crowd gasped again, louder this time. Marcus's heart dropped. Them? Who? The kidnappers, David said, his voice low and heavy. My mother was kidnapped a week ago. We've searched everywhere. The woman, David's wife, Marcus realized, held her purse tightly. They told us not to trust anyone. What if this is a trap? Marcus raised both hands, palms open. Ma'am, I promise you, I didn't kidnap her. I found her sitting on the ground near the bus stop. She was crying and asking for help. I just wanted to make sure she was safe. The security guards tensed, ready to move. David's eyes scanned Marcus's face, searching for any hint of deception. Then, from inside the small apartment, came a weak, trembling voice that cut through everything. "David." Everyone froze. David's entire body went rigid. His jaw clenched. Without another word, he pushed forward and climbed the stairs 2 at a time. His wife followed close behind, her heels clicking rapidly on the old wooden steps. When David pushed open the apartment door, the air inside felt thick and still. Miss Helen sat on the couch, wrapped in the thin blanket Marcus had draped over her shoulders. Her eyes were glassy with tears. The moment she saw David, she struggled to stand, her legs shaking beneath her. "David, my son." David's face crumpled. He crossed the small room in 2 strides, dropped to his knees, and wrapped his arms around her. "Mom. Mom, I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I thought I'd lost you." The crowd outside the door began to clap softly. Some people wiped tears from their faces. Even David's wife, standing near the doorway, covered her mouth and cried quietly. Miss Helen held her son's face in her palms, touching his cheeks as if she needed to confirm he was real. "They left me on that road," she whispered. "They took my phone and my purse. I begged strangers for help. Nobody stopped. Until this young man came." She pointed at Marcus, who stood awkwardly near the small kitchen area. David turned to look at him. For a long moment he didn't speak. His eyes were red. Then he stood and walked toward Marcus slowly. "You carried my mother?" David asked. "Yes, sir," Marcus said quietly. "You fed her? You called us?" "Yes, sir." David exhaled deeply, as if letting go of a stone he'd been carrying for days. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You didn't know who she was. But you helped anyway." Marcus nodded, still too stunned to fully process that one of Seattle's most powerful men was standing in his tiny apartment, smelling of expensive cologne mixed with the faint scent of old furniture. David turned to his security team, who were now standing just outside the door. "Prepare the car. She's going home." Then he turned back to Marcus. "You're coming with us." Marcus blinked. "Me?" "Yes," David said, glancing around at the cracked walls and the single window with the broken latch. "I want you to see where your kindness has brought you." As they carefully helped Miss Helen out of the apartment, the crowd outside erupted in excitement. Phones rose again, recording every moment. People who had laughed at Marcus earlier now called his name like he was famous. "Marcus, you did good. That's the kind of helper we need." Marcus didn't respond. He simply helped Miss Helen into the SUV, supporting her arm gently. The leather seat felt impossibly clean compared to his dusty uniform, but he sat quietly on the far edge while David and his wife whispered to each other in the front. The convoy rolled out slowly, and Marcus watched his neighborhood disappear through the tinted windows. The drive took 45 minutes through Seattle's afternoon traffic, moving from the crowded streets of Pioneer Square into the quiet, tree-lined roads of Medina, the exclusive neighborhood where only the wealthiest residents lived. Marcus pressed his face slightly closer to the window, watching as the houses grew larger and farther apart. Manicured lawns. Stone fountains. Gates that opened automatically. When they finally arrived at David Chen's estate, Marcus's breath caught in his throat. The gate was tall and made of ornate iron. It opened slowly, revealing a long driveway lined with perfectly trimmed hedges. A marble fountain stood in the center of the circular drive, water cascading down in elegant streams. The mansion itself was massive, 3 stories of pale stone and floor-to-ceiling windows that sparkled in the late afternoon light. Marcus had only ever seen places like this in movies. "Welcome home, Miss Helen," one of the security guards said gently as they helped her out of the vehicle. She smiled faintly. "Home." David's wife, whose name Marcus learned was Catherine, held Miss Helen's hand as they walked slowly toward the front entrance. Marcus followed a few steps behind, unsure of where he should walk or what he should do. Inside, the house was even more breathtaking. The foyer had white marble floors so clean they reflected the chandelier hanging overhead. Expensive paintings lined the walls. Everything smelled faintly of lavender and wood polish. "Please sit," David said, gesturing toward a cream-colored sofa in the living room. Marcus hesitated before perching on the very edge of the cushion. He didn't want to leave any dirt or marks. David sat across from him, his expression softer now but still serious. "You look nervous." "A little, sir," Marcus admitted. "You shouldn't be," David said. "My mother told me you saved her life. For that, my family will be forever grateful." Before Marcus could respond, a man in a white coat entered the room, David's private physician. "Sir," the doctor said after a brief examination of Miss Helen in the next room, "she's weak but stable. No major injuries. She just needs rest and fluids." David nodded, visibly relieved. "Thank you, doctor." After the doctor left, David stood and gestured toward the French doors leading to the garden. "Come with me, Marcus. Let's talk." They stepped outside into a beautifully landscaped garden. The air smelled like roses and freshly cut grass. A stone path wound between flower beds, leading to a small bench beneath a cherry blossom tree. David stopped and turned to face Marcus directly. "What do you do for work?" he asked. "I'm a courier, sir. I deliver packages for a small company downtown." "Do you live alone?" "Yes, sir. My parents passed away when I was 17. David studied him for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Do you like your job?" Marcus hesitated. "I'm grateful for it, sir. It pays my rent. But sometimes I feel like I'm meant for something more." David's lips curved into a slight smile, the kind of smile people make when they've already decided something important. "You're right," David said. "Starting tomorrow, you'll work for me as my personal assistant." Marcus's mouth fell open. "Sir, you've proven you can think quickly under pressure," David continued. "You took responsibility for someone you didn't even know. Those are rare qualities. I need people like you around me." I don't know what to say," Marcus stammered. "Just say yes," David said with a small laugh. "You'll live here temporarily while we set up your new office and find you a proper place nearby." Marcus felt tears prick the corners of his eyes. "Thank you, sir. I won't let you down." David clapped him on the shoulder. "I know you won't. Just keep being yourself. That's all I ask." As they walked back into the house, Marcus saw Miss Helen sitting in the living room, sipping tea while Catherine gently brushed her hair. When Miss Helen noticed Marcus, her face lit up. "Come here, my dear," she said warmly. Marcus sat on a small ottoman beside her chair. "You remind me of David when he was your age," she said softly. "Kind. Determined. Always ready to help." David smiled. "He's even better than I was, Mom." Marcus's eyes filled with tears again. He wiped them quickly, embarrassed. That night, they gave him a guest room on the second floor. It was bigger than his entire apartment. The bed had crisp white sheets and pillows so soft they felt like clouds. Through the window, he could see the city lights twinkling in the distance. When he finally lay down, it felt like floating. But just as sleep began to pull him under, there was a soft knock on the door. Marcus sat up quickly, his heart racing. He glanced at the clock on the nightstand. 11:47 p.m. "Come in," he said quietly. The door opened, and Catherine stepped inside, still dressed in her evening clothes. Her expression was kind but concerned. "I'm sorry to disturb you," she said softly. "I just wanted to check if you had everything you needed." "Yes, ma'am. Thank you. This room it's more than I ever imagined." She smiled, but there was something else in her eyes, something that looked like worry. "Marcus, you did something truly wonderful today. My mother-in-law means everything to this family. We're all grateful to you." "Thank you, ma'am." Catherine hesitated, then stepped a little closer, lowering her voice. "But I need you to be careful. Marcus frowned. Careful. About what? This family. We have many people watching us. Some are loyal. Others. She paused. Others may not be happy about sudden changes. Kindness can draw both love and jealousy. Before Marcus could ask what she meant, Catherine smiled again, a polite, practiced smile, and turned toward the door. Sleep well, Marcus. Tomorrow is a new beginning. The door closed softly behind her, leaving Marcus alone with her words echoing in his mind. Jealousy? From who? He lay back down, staring at the ceiling, but sleep felt far away now. Downstairs, he could faintly hear Miss Helen's laughter mixing with David's voice. Everything seemed perfect, peaceful. But somewhere else in the mansion, behind a closed door in the east wing, a shadow moved. A man sat at a desk, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in a harsh whisper. He's already here. The delivery boy they're calling a hero. A pause. Don't worry. I'll make sure he doesn't last long. The phone screen glowed faintly in the darkness, reflecting in a pair of cold, calculating eyes. The next morning, sunlight poured through the tall windows, painting the white walls gold. Birds sang outside on the balcony railings. The fountain in the garden sparkled like scattered jewels. Marcus woke slowly, still half convinced that everything had been a dream. He sat up and looked around the luxurious room. The plush carpet, the mahogany dresser, the tablet sitting on the desk with a note beside it. Marcus, this is your work tablet. Welcome to the team. David. He showered quickly in the marble bathroom, marveling at the water pressure and the heated floors. When he stepped out into the hallway wearing the fresh clothes that had been left for him, a crisp button-down shirt and dark slacks, he passed a young housekeeper sweeping. She stopped and smiled shyly. Good morning, sir. Marcus blinked. Sir. Please, just call me Marcus. She giggled. Mr. Chen said you're his new assistant. So you're our boss now. No, Marcus said quickly. I'm not anyone's boss. I'm just Marcus. She smiled wider and continued sweeping. As Marcus walked down the long hallway, the scent of fresh coffee and pancakes filled the air. He followed it to a sunlit breakfast room where Miss Helen sat under a white umbrella on the patio, wearing a clean traditional dress and sipping tea. Her face looked brighter. Younger, even. My dear boy, she called when she saw him. Come sit with me. Marcus joined her at the table, still feeling like he was living someone else's life. You look well this morning, Miss Helen. Thanks to you, she said warmly. I slept better than I have in weeks. Just then, David appeared in a charcoal suit, his phone in one hand and a coffee mug in the other. Morning, Marcus. Morning, Mom. Good morning, sir, Marcus replied quickly. David set his coffee down and looked at Marcus seriously. After breakfast, meet me in my office. There's a major presentation coming up for the board next week. You'll help me coordinate it. Marcus's pulse quickened. Yes, sir. I'm ready. Miss Helen beamed proudly. See how quickly life changes. Yesterday you carried me on your back. Today you're working beside my son. David chuckled. Kindness moves faster than any elevator, Mom. But from the second-floor balcony above them, someone stood watching. His arms were crossed. His jaw was tight. It was Peter Lawson, David Chen's longtime executive assistant. He had worked for David for 6 years and had quietly assumed he was irreplaceable. Until Marcus showed up. Peter's eyes narrowed as he watched Marcus laugh with Miss Helen and David. Enjoy it while it lasts, he muttered under his breath. Then he turned and walked back inside, already planning his next move. By mid-morning, Marcus was already deep into his new role. David's office was modern and spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. Shelves lined with awards and framed photos of ribbon-cutting ceremonies filled one wall. David handed Marcus a tablet. This has my full schedule and all my active project files. You'll coordinate my calls, manage emails, and join meetings to take notes. Marcus nodded, scrolling through the calendar. It was packed, back-to-back meetings, investor calls, charity events. I believe in trust, Marcus, David said seriously. And I don't keep people around that I don't trust. Thank you, sir. I won't let you down. Good. Lunch is at 1. And... David paused, a slight smile on his face. Ignore the noise. Marcus frowned. What noise, sir? David's smile faded slightly, but he didn't answer. He simply turned back to his laptop. By 11 o'clock, Marcus had already organized 3 meetings, responded to a dozen emails, and coordinated a conference call with investors in New York. He was focused, efficient, and surprisingly comfortable with the technology. But every few minutes, he felt eyes on him. When he finally looked up, Peter Lawson was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, wearing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You're fast, Peter said, his tone casual but cold. Marcus stood politely. Good morning, sir. Peter laughed. A short, sharp sound. Don't call me sir. You're the boss's favorite now, remember? I didn't mean. Peter cut him off. I know why you're here, Marcus. But let me give you some advice. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. People forget kindness. They remember loyalty. And loyalty takes years to build. Marcus didn't know how to respond. The tension in the air felt thick, almost suffocating. Before he could say anything, Peter turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing down the marble hallway. Marcus sat back down slowly, his chest tight. What did I do to him? The rest of the day passed in a blur. At lunch, David introduced Marcus to the household staff, the chef, the gardener, the driver, and 2 housekeepers. Everyone smiled politely, but Marcus could sense an invisible wall between them. They were friendly, but cautious. That evening, as the sun set and painted the sky orange and pink, Marcus found Miss Helen sitting in the garden again, a blanket draped over her shoulders. May I join you, Miss Helen? Marcus asked. Of course, my dear. Sit. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the fountain's water catch the last rays of sunlight. Miss Helen, Marcus said gently, can I ask you something? Anything. How did you end up on that street? What happened to you? She sighed deeply, her fingers tightening around the edge of her blanket. It's still like a terrible dream, she said quietly. I was walking home from church one afternoon. A car pulled up beside me. I thought it was the driver David had sent. But when I got close, her voice wavered. Everything went dark. Marcus leaned forward, listening intently. When I woke up, I was in a small, cold room. 2 men were there. They kept asking for David's phone number, but I refused to tell them. I prayed every hour. How did you escape? Marcus asked. I didn't, she said. After 2 days, they blindfolded me, drove for what felt like hours, and left me on that street corner. They took my phone, my purse, everything. Marcus's throat tightened. You went through all that alone. She reached over and placed her hand on his. But God sent you. Her words settled over him like a warm blanket. Never change, Marcus, she said softly. Don't let wealth or power harden your heart. I won't, Miss Helen. I promise. At that moment, Catherine appeared in the garden doorway. Dinner's ready, Miss Helen. Marcus, please join us. Dinner that night was elegant but surprisingly warm. The dining table was long and made of polished oak. Plates of roasted salmon, wild rice, and grilled vegetables were served on fine china. David and Catherine talked about upcoming charity projects. Miss Helen ate slowly, smiling at their conversations. Halfway through the meal, Peter entered quietly and whispered something into David's ear. David's expression shifted, his jaw tightened, his eyes darkened. What? When? David asked sharply. Peter handed him a folded piece of paper. Catherine looked up, concerned. What's wrong, David? Nothing serious, David said, forcing a calm smile. Just some company data we need to review. We'll handle it later. But Marcus noticed how David's knuckles turned white as he gripped the paper. And he noticed the way Peter glanced at him, just for a second, with a look that felt almost like satisfaction. Something was wrong. Very wrong. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He lay in the luxurious bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment at dinner when David's face had changed. Something Peter had said, or shown him, had shifted everything. Around midnight, Marcus's phone buzzed on the nightstand. He picked it up and saw a text from an unknown number. Be careful who you trust in that house. Marcus's heart skipped. He typed back quickly. Who is this? No response. He stared at the screen for a long time, then finally turned off the light. But sleep never came. The next morning felt different. The air in the house was heavier, quieter. When Marcus arrived at the office, David was already there, staring intensely at his laptop. He didn't look up when Marcus entered. Good morning, sir, Marcus said carefully. David's response was clipped. Morning. Marcus sat down at his desk and began working through the day's schedule, but the tension in the room was thick. Every few minutes, he glanced over at David, who seemed lost in thought, his jaw tight. Around 10 o'clock, David's phone rang. He answered quickly, speaking in low tones. Marcus tried not to listen, but he caught a few words. Security breach, financial files, leaked. When David hung up, he finally looked at Marcus, but his expression was cold. Marcus, did you access any company files last night? Marcus blinked, confused. No, sir. I haven't accessed anything outside of what you gave me. David's eyes narrowed. Are you sure? Yes, sir. I swear. David stood and walked over, holding his phone out. On the screen was an email log showing a confidential financial document had been forwarded from Marcus's company account at 2:47 a.m. This says otherwise, David said, his voice hard. Marcus's stomach dropped. Sir, that's impossible. I was asleep. I don't even know my email password yet. You never gave it to me. The IT department confirmed it came from your account. Then someone else used it, Marcus said, his voice rising with desperation. Sir, please. I would never betray you. Not after everything. Enough. David's voice cut through the air like a blade. Until we figure out what happened, you're suspended. Stay away from the office. Marcus felt like the floor had disappeared beneath him. Sir. Security will escort you out. 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Marcus looked at them, then back at David, whose face was a mask of disappointment and anger. Sir, please believe me, Marcus whispered. But David had already turned away. The walk through the mansion felt like a nightmare. Staff members who had smiled at him yesterday now avoided his eyes. As he passed the living room, he saw Miss Helen sitting with Catherine, and his heart broke. Miss Helen looked up, her face full of confusion and concern. Marcus. What's happening? He couldn't answer. His throat was too tight. Outside, rain had started to fall. A cold, steady drizzle. Marcus stood under the covered entrance as the security guards waited for him to leave the property. He pulled out his phone and saw another message from the unknown number. They've set you up. Don't go home. Trust no one. Marcus's hands trembled. He typed back. Who are you? Again, no response. He looked back at the mansion one last time. Through a second-floor window, he saw Peter Lawson watching him, arms crossed, the faintest hint of a smile on his face. And in that moment, Marcus understood. Peter had done this. Marcus didn't go back to his old apartment. Instead, he walked for hours through the rain, trying to make sense of everything. His clothes were soaked. His phone battery was dying. And the only place he could think to go was a 24-hour diner near Pike Place Market. He sat in a corner booth, ordered a coffee he couldn't afford, and tried to think. How had someone accessed his account? He'd barely even used it. And why would Peter frame him? Jealousy, he remembered. Catherine's warning echoed in his mind. His phone buzzed one more time. Another unknown message. Check your email. I sent you proof. But be ready. They're coming for you. Marcus's heart raced. He opened his email app, which he'd barely used since David gave him the tablet. There, in his inbox, was a message from an encrypted address. No subject line. He opened it. Inside was a video file. With shaking hands, Marcus pressed play. The video showed Peter Lawson sitting at a desk, David's office desk, late at night. The timestamp read 2:43 a.m. Peter was typing on a laptop, glancing around nervously. Then he pulled out a small USB drive, plugged it into the computer, and began transferring files. The camera angle shifted slightly. It was security footage from inside the mansion. Marcus's breath caught. This was the proof. This was everything. But before he could process it, the diner door swung open violently. 3 men in dark suits entered, scanning the room. One of them pointed directly at Marcus. There. Marcus's blood ran cold. The 3 men started walking toward his booth, their expressions hard and unreadable. He grabbed his phone, shoved it in his pocket, and stood quickly, looking for another exit. Marcus Chen. One of the men called out. Marcus didn't answer. He moved toward the back of the diner, where a dimly lit hallway led to the restrooms, and hopefully a back door. Wait! The man called again, his voice sharper now. Marcus pushed through the hallway door and ran. His heart pounded in his chest as he burst through the emergency exit into a narrow alley filled with dumpsters and rain-soaked cardboard boxes. He ran hard, splashing through puddles, his lungs burning. Behind him, he could hear footsteps and shouting. He turned a corner, then another, weaving through the maze of alleys behind the market. Finally, he ducked into a covered loading dock and pressed himself against the wall, trying to catch his breath. The footsteps grew closer, then stopped. He went this way, one voice said. Split up, another replied. Marcus waited, his chest heaving. Rain dripped from his hair into his eyes. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out carefully, shielding the screen's glow with his hand. Another message from the unknown number. Those men aren't from David. They work for the real criminal. Get to the police. Now. Marcus's mind raced. If they weren't from David, then who sent them? He waited until the voices faded, then carefully stepped out of the loading dock. He needed to get to the police station. Fast. By the time Marcus reached the Seattle Police Department's downtown precinct, dawn was breaking. The rain had stopped, but he was soaked, exhausted, and terrified. He pushed through the glass doors and approached the front desk, where a tired-looking officer looked up from her computer. I need help, Marcus said breathlessly. I have evidence of a crime. Someone framed me, and now people are chasing me. The officer's expression shifted from bored to alert. Slow down. What's your name? Marcus Chen. Her eyes widened slightly. Wait here. She picked up a phone and spoke quietly into it. 2 minutes later, a tall detective in a gray suit appeared, Detective Sarah Park, according to her badge. Marcus Chen, she asked. Yes, ma'am. Come with me. She led him to a small interview room with a table, 2 chairs, and a recording camera mounted in the corner. Sit, she said, not unkindly. Tell me everything. Marcus did. He told her about finding Miss Helen, about David Chen hiring him, about Peter Lawson's coldness, and about the email that had been sent from his account in the middle of the night. Then he pulled out his phone. Someone sent me this. He showed her the security footage of Peter transferring files. Detective Park watched carefully, her expression darkening. When the video ended, she looked up at Marcus. Do you know who sent this to you? No. It's from an unknown number. She nodded slowly. Stay here. Don't leave this room. An hour later, Detective Park returned with 2 other officers and a laptop. "We've been investigating tech innovations for the past 6 months," she said. "We suspected someone on the inside was embezzling money through false contracts and offshore accounts. We just didn't know who." Marcus's eyes widened. "You think it's Peter?" "We're not sure yet. But this video is the first real evidence we've had." She paused. "We're going to need your help." "Anything," Marcus said. "We need you to go back." Marcus's stomach dropped. "Back to the mansion?" "Yes. We'll wire you. You'll talk to David Chen and tell him everything. If Peter is the one behind this, he'll try to stop you. And when he does, we'll have him." Marcus swallowed hard. "What if David doesn't believe me?" Detective Park's expression softened. "Then we'll show him the evidence ourselves. But I have a feeling he'll listen." 2 hours later, Marcus stood outside the gates of David Chen's estate, flanked by 2 undercover officers in an unmarked car parked a block away. A tiny microphone was clipped inside his collar. He pressed the buzzer. A voice crackled through the intercom. "Who is it?" "It's Marcus. I need to speak to Mr. Chen. It's urgent." There was a long pause. Then the gate slowly began to open. Marcus walked up the long driveway, his heart pounding with every step. When he reached the front door, it opened before he could knock. David stood there, his face exhausted and conflicted. "You shouldn't be here," David said quietly. "I know, sir. But I have something you need to see." David stared at Marcus for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he stepped aside. "Come in. But this better be good." Marcus entered the foyer, his shoes still wet from the rain. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Miss Helen and Catherine were nowhere to be seen. David led him into the study and closed the door firmly behind them. "You have 2 minutes," David said, crossing his arms. Marcus took a breath. "Sir, I didn't send that email. I was set up." "By who?" "Peter Lawson." David's jaw tightened. "That's a serious accusation, Marcus." "I know. But I have proof." Marcus pulled out his phone and showed David the security footage. David watched in silence, his face growing darker with each passing second. When the video ended, he looked up, his eyes blazing with anger, not at Marcus, but at what he'd just seen. "Where did you get this?" David asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Someone sent it to me anonymously. I don't know who. But it's real, sir. The timestamp matches exactly when the email was sent from my account." David sank into his desk chair, running a hand over his face. "I trusted him for 6 years. I'm sorry, sir." "Don't apologize. You tried to tell me." David looked up. "Where is Peter now?" "I don't know. But there's more, sir. The police have been investigating your company. They think someone's been embezzling money for months." David's expression shifted to shock. "What?" Before Marcus could answer, the study door burst open. Peter Lawson stood in the doorway, his face pale and his eyes wild. "You couldn't just leave, could you?" Peter hissed, staring at Marcus. David stood slowly. "Peter, we need to talk." "No." Peter's voice was sharp, almost frantic. "No, you don't understand. This kid is lying. He's trying to turn you against me." "I watched the security footage, Peter," David said coldly. "I saw you in my office at 3 in the morning." Peter's face went slack. For a moment, he looked like he might collapse. Then his expression hardened. "I did it for this company," he said bitterly. "For you. I've been here for 6 years, David. 6 years of loyalty. And you replace me with some street nobody after one good deed. So you framed him?" David's voice rose. "You stole from me? From my family?" "I didn't steal," Peter shouted. "I redirected funds to accounts that would have protected us if the market crashed. I was trying to help by lying. By setting up an innocent person. Peter's hands balled into fists. He doesn't belong here. He doesn't understand this world. You were going to throw me away for him. I never threw you away, David said, his voice trembling with restrained fury. I trusted you. I gave you everything. And this is how you repay me. Peter took a step back, his eyes darting between David and Marcus. You don't understand. The police are outside, Marcus said quietly. Peter froze. David's eyes widened. You called the police? They've been investigating for months, Marcus said. I just gave them the final piece. Peter's face drained of all color. He turned toward the door, but it was too late. Detective Park entered, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. Peter Lawson, she said calmly, you're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and corporate espionage. Peter didn't run. He just stood there, staring at the floor as the officers cuffed his hands behind his back. As they led him toward the door, he looked back at Marcus one last time. You should have stayed gone, Peter muttered. And you should have been honest, Marcus replied quietly. After Peter was taken away, the house fell into a heavy silence. David sat at his desk, staring at nothing. Miss Helen appeared in the doorway, supported by Catherine. Her face was pale with shock. David, she said softly. Is it true? Peter did all this. David nodded slowly. Yes, Mama. It's true. Miss Helen looked at Marcus, her eyes filled with sadness and gratitude. My dear boy. You've saved us again. Marcus shook his head. I just did what was right, Miss Helen. Catherine stepped forward and placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. You risked everything to clear your name. Not many people would do that. I learned from good people, Marcus said, glancing at Miss Helen. David finally stood and walked over to Marcus. I owe you an apology. I should have trusted you. You were protecting your family, sir. I understand. No, David said firmly. I let fear and doubt cloud my judgment. You deserved better. He extended his hand. Will you come back? As my assistant? For real this time. Marcus looked at the outstretched hand, then at the faces around him. Miss Helen, Catherine, even the staff members peeking in from the hallway. He smiled and shook David's hand. Yes, sir. I'd be honored. 3 months passed. The investigation into Peter Lawson revealed a network of fraud that stretched back nearly 2 years. He had been funneling money into offshore accounts under the guise of emergency investments, planning to disappear once he'd collected enough. His jealousy of Marcus had simply accelerated his downfall. Peter was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Tech innovations recovered, and David Chen's reputation remained intact. In fact, it grew stronger. News outlets praised Marcus as the whistleblower who'd helped expose corporate corruption. His face appeared in local papers with headlines like, From Courier to Hero, the young man who saved a tech empire. But Marcus didn't care about fame. He cared about the work. He'd moved into a modest but beautiful townhouse in Capitol Hill, paid for by David as a thank you gift. Every morning, he woke up, made coffee, and drove to Tech Innovations headquarters, where he worked closely with David on projects that actually helped people. Funding schools, creating job programs, and building technology for underserved communities. Miss Helen recovered fully. She spent her days in the mansion's garden, tending to roses and hosting weekly Bible study groups. She often called Marcus just to check on him, and every Sunday, he joined her for dinner. One evening, as autumn leaves began to fall across Seattle, David invited Marcus to a charity gala at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel. It was a black tie event benefiting youth education programs. You need to come, David insisted. You're part of this family now. Marcus hesitated. I don't really own a tuxedo, sir. David laughed. I already had one tailored for you. It's in your office. That night, Marcus stood in the grand ballroom surrounded by some of Seattle's wealthiest and most influential people. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. A string quartet played softly in the corner. And standing near the refreshment table, talking animatedly with a group of young professionals, was a woman who caught his attention immediately. She had kind eyes and a warm smile. She wore a simple but elegant navy dress. When she laughed, the sound carried across the room like music. Catherine noticed Marcus staring and nudged him gently. That's Emily Chin, David's younger sister. She just moved back from New York. Marcus's cheeks warmed. She's beautiful. She's also brilliant, Catherine added with a knowing smile. She runs a non-profit for homeless youth. I think you two would get along very well. Before Marcus could respond, Emily looked up and their eyes met across the room. She smiled. Marcus smiled back. Catherine gave him a gentle push. Go talk to her. Marcus walked over nervously, holding a glass of sparkling water like a lifeline. Hi, he said. I'm Marcus. I know who you are, Emily said warmly. You're the guy who saved my mom. Marcus blinked. Your mom? Well, my aunt technically. Miss Helen. But she's like a mother to me. Emily extended her hand. It's nice to finally meet you. I've heard so much about you. They talked for the rest of the evening. About her non-profit. About his journey from courier to assistant. About their shared love for helping others. When the gala ended, Emily handed Marcus her business card. If you ever want to grab coffee and talk about changing the world, call me. Marcus took the card, grinning. I'd like that. 6 months later, Marcus and Emily were inseparable. They worked together on community projects, spent weekends volunteering at shelters, and dreamed about building something even bigger. On a sunny spring afternoon, Marcus took Emily to the spot where he'd first found Miss Helen, the bus stop near Pike Place Market. Why are we here? Emily asked, curious. Because this is where everything changed for me, Marcus said. This is where I learned that one act of kindness can transform your entire life. He turned to face her, his heart pounding. Emily, you've changed my life again. You've shown me that kindness isn't just something you give, it's something you build together. He knelt down on one knee. Emily gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Will you marry me? Marcus asked, his voice full of emotion. Tears streamed down her face. Yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Their wedding was held in the mansion's garden, surrounded by blooming roses and the people who had become Marcus's family. Miss Helen sat in the front row, beaming with pride. David and Catherine stood beside them as witnesses. As Marcus and Emily exchanged vows, Miss Helen whispered to David, "That boy carried me when no one else would. And now look, he's carried blessings into all our lives." David smiled, his own eyes glistening. "He taught me something I'd forgotten, Mama. That real wealth isn't measured in money. It's measured in character." 2 years later, Marcus and Emily welcomed a baby boy. They named him Henry, after Marcus's late father. On the day Henry was born, Miss Helen held him in her arms, her hands trembling with joy. "This is what kindness builds," she whispered. "Generations of love." Marcus stood beside her, his arm around Emily, looking at their son with overwhelming gratitude. He thought back to that hot, dusty afternoon when he'd carried a stranger on his back through a laughing crowd. He'd had no idea that one decision, one moment of choosing compassion over convenience, would lead to all of this. A family, a purpose, a life filled with meaning. As the evening sun cast golden light across the room, Marcus whispered a quiet prayer of thanks. Kindness had brought him home, and he would spend the rest of his life passing it forward. The end. Thank you so much for joining us on Marcus's incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories, and share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Drop a comment telling us what lesson you're taking away from Marcus's story. Remember, one act of kindness can change everything. See you in the next story.